Oh, you want to see me? Better to see you. Oh. Okay. Harry. Is it Harry Krishna?
Harry.
We got Harry and Baldy. Yeah. What about the microphone? Give her a microphone, or? Okay.
So, in the demonstration which you did, when I see, sorry,
Speaking of the microphone, yeah.
I see that when somebody insults us, there is a rush within us which makes us respond immediately. But looks like when it comes to self-empathy or empathizing with others, especially empathizing with others, needs...
Go a little slower.
Yes. When somebody insults, I see that, especially me, I have a need or rush to respond immediately.
Right.
But when I see that there is to do the self-empathy or empathize with others, I need to pause.
Yes.
But how do I address this rush? And from where is this rush coming? I need to understand that.
That is the challenge. What we talk about is you need to do sort of a timeout, and it's sort of hard. You feel like the need to respond. I gave that example the other day, that when I get an email that stimulates some really strong emotion, I feel a need to respond immediately and crush the other person. Not just rush, to crush. Teach him a lesson. You said this about me, I'll say that about you. And you get sort of the word catharsis? It means an emotional release. Like when you respond to someone immediately, he says, you're a jerk. No, you're a jerk. Then you feel, gotta feel better. So there's this pushing to respond like that. So one has to train oneself. It's a question of practice. Okay, if I send the email right away, I'm going to regret it later. And we talked about this you weren't there. So basically the best thing is to use WhatsApp, because you can erase your email, your messages, as long as they haven't received it, and you can see if they've received it. The two checks that are actually blued out, then you can see it. And I gave the example, and some of you heard me talk about this the other day, that sometimes that'll happen with me. I'll send a real heavy response, and I'm able to delete it. But sometimes I'm just like so much emotionally overwrought that I'll only delete it for me and not for them. There's this option when you delete a message. Delete it for everyone or delete it for yourself. And so I just, and I said, oh my God, I don't even have a copy of the message anymore, and this person, I can't delete it. So basically, think before you speak and think before you act. Because, what is that? Act in haste, lament at leisure. You ever heard that statement before? So act in haste, lament at leisure. Leisure means, you take your time to lament about it. So, whoops, okay, thank you. Thank you. Nice, Mala, thank you. Very nice. So he did it with devotion. Had a smile. It's not like... They did it gladly. So he didn't have to do that. He did that out of devotion, which is what we want. Krishna only accepts things out of devotion, not rituals. Krishna does not accept rituals. That's niyamagraha. So anyway, getting back to the point, it's a question of developing a personal habit. You know, sometimes I'll read other people's emails, not just to me, but to someone else, and say, oh my God, did she say that? I do that with you sometimes. I said, I can't believe she wrote that to that person. And I could feel that she's just like, I got him! Anyway, we'll speak about it later. So anyway, so I just try to, you know, get my emotions down before I write something. I'm not always successful, but I try to develop the habit before I respond. Okay, take a walk, chant some japa, go to sleep, wake up the next morning. You know, it's a question of developing the habit of not responding instantaneously. And then you think of, how do I feel? What are my needs? And then you're emotionally neutral at that point. Because without being emotionally neutral, you can't think of anyone else. You just can't. I mean, if you have unmet needs, like really intense unmet needs, like hunger and the need for understanding, you're just not going to have a clear mind. So a timeout is essential. You know, I remember one story that Marshall Rosenberg told, I think it's in this book, that his son did something that really pushed his wrong button, pushed the buttons, you know, made him aggravated. And he said to the son something like, do you want me to respond now, or do you want me to respond empathically later on? So, empathy requires time. It's a good question. Yes? Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes when you get an email and it's very, very aggravating, and you feel like responding to it right away.
Right.
And if you don't respond, then it is hard for you to sleep. What I would say that go ahead and write a message as bad as you want to write, but don't send it.
Yeah.
Wait till next day.
Yeah, that's good.
Then you can edit it, change it. At least you can sleep better that you wrote something.
Yeah. Well, that's actually what Benjamin Franklin said. He said they didn't have emails in those days. He was one of the founding fathers of the United States. He said, when you write an angry letter, just write it, put it in your desk. Next morning you wake up and tear it. So yes, that's one of the strategies. Yeah. The next day you just tear it up. Of course, it's a little harder when you're face to face with someone. What I do is I say, would you like me to respond empathically or on the spur of the moment? And they say, well, we'd like you to be empathic. Then you got to wait. So yeah, because sometimes face-to-face is the most difficult thing. Email is a little bit more easy than face-to-face. Good, yeah. Yeah, Modi's expert in that, responding the proper way. So, any other questions before we continue? Because we're going to start talking about the 4 Ds of this communication. And actually I want to read a quote from Prabhupada first, or the blocks of communication. Here's a quote from Prabhupada, which is really beautiful. It's from the Bhagavatam 1.6.37. Sutta Goswami said, this is the verse, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narada Muni took leave of him and vibrating on his vina instrument, he left to wander at his free will. The operative phrase there is free will. Narada Muni and free will. It's not that Krishna is on his back all the time, saying, go here, go there, Narada Muni. Free will. Interesting, isn't it? This is really important. I mean, this is another subject matter that we're dealing with in the GBC conference. That there's some people in ISKCON who say that the soul was put into the material world because that's his nature. He was put in, for no reason whatsoever, we were put into this material world. In other words, we were never with Krishna. Think about that. The implication of that particular statement, we were never with Krishna, therefore we were put into this material world. We were born in the material world, or somehow we're sent out of something called the Tatashta. And that is so similar to another religious philosophy. What religion? Yes, what is their philosophy? What? But there's another point. Something called the original what? Original sin. Because we are responsible, according to them, for what these two idiots, sorry. You know the two idiots? You know their names? Adam and Eve. You know, I'm suffering because what these jerks did. You know, Eve ate the apple, and Adam happened to listen to his wife, you know, the original sin, listening to your wife. Anyway. Sorry about that one. Anyway. So, you know, that's exactly, you know, so they're having this whole discussion, you know, where did the soul come from? And then people are taking verses out of context to make one point or another point. And I just sent a message this morning, this is what I got to deal with, that you got to understand the implications of this particular statement, saying that we were put in the material world by Krishna. We didn't do anything about, you know, we didn't do anything to deserve it. It just, this is where we are. And basically, another point is they're implying that the soul is not eternal. The soul was created at some point, the individual soul. And it goes against Krishna's statements in the Gita. Ajanitya sashvata yam purana nahanyate hanyamane. The soul is never birth, nor death, nor having been, does he ever cease to be. He's primeval, you know, all these statements like that. So basically they're taking away the free will from the soul. Because we are where we are due to our exercise of free will. That's responsibility, right? Don't blame anyone else. You took birth in a certain country, you have certain karma. Of course, now that you're devotees, hopefully you don't have any karma, just some nice token reactions. You know, people say, well, you're my token reaction. You know, imagine, what a relationship. So you're token. You've heard that before? Oh no. So, you know, so anyway, so we're responsible. We should not deny responsibility. We're here because we did something, acted in a certain way, had a certain mentality, and we deserve to be here. Okay. So let me continue reading. This is very interesting about free will. So Prabhupada talks about, and this is the need for autonomy that we all have to make our own decisions like this. So every living being is anxious, especially all you ABCDs have this need for autonomy. And it's been really suppressed your whole lives. The need to make your own decisions. Your whole lives, your parents are saying, you know, your business is to fulfill our needs. You are our parts and parcels. Mami Vamsa Jiva Loke. You know the verse in Bhagavad Gita. So, this is called the domination culture, where someone else is supposed to fulfill your need. And of course, I mean, in India you have servants, so it's really easy. You know, I visit some of my friends in India, and you go to their homes, and they have these young girl servants, right? And they're just like, yeah, do this, do this, do that. And I'm just thinking, oh my God. I mean, I was with one spiritual master, you know, years and years ago. And the spiritual master was taking prasadam, I was taking prasadam with him. I'm not mentioning names. This time I'm not going to mention names. And the chapati was not properly puffed up or something like that. And it's just like, yeah, what's wrong with you? And so the poor devotee who was serving his guru was crying, you know, tears were pouring. He's a man. Tears were pouring down from his eyes like torrents of rain, like according to the Shikshashtaka. And I just had to leave the dinner, I had to put my arms around, all right, you're getting purified. What's called the ordeal of fire, right? Guru Maharaj is purifying me. I mean, when I joined the movement, we got purified in so many different ways. We would eat a lot of chili peppers, we get purified by indigestion. So devotional service, you get purified by everything. You know, someone gets sick, instead of being empathic with them, you know, instead of saying, you know, that, you know, you're in a lot of pain, you say that you're getting purified, Prabhu. See, opposite of empathy. So anyway, it's just a funny dynamic that occurs where we treat others, we demand from others things, and we don't recognize their free will. And it sort of runs counter to bhakti. You know, people should do things because they're choosing. Like we talked about in the beginning, we should do things because we're choosing to do it. You know, the question is, you know, I have to do, we were talking to some people today, you know, I have to do this, have to do this, have to do that. Well, you rephrase it in your mind. I'm not saying give up your activity, you know, resign from work. Continue working, but connected to why you have to do it. From the heart. It has to be something from the heart, some deep need. Like, I'm working because I really care. The welfare of my child is very important. That's the need. And the care is the emotion. So I really care for my children. I really love my children. And I'm working so that they can have a good future. The need, you know, for my children to have a good future. So when you do that, then it's joyfully performed. I'm doing arti to actually please the Lord or become Krishna conscious or please my spiritual master, something from the heart. You got to figure, you're the one who has to figure that out. What it is, the need you're fulfilling. It's not up to anyone else to tell you what your needs are. You have to have that connection. You know, just use your brain. You know, why am I doing, we talked about it yesterday. Think about the why. Why am I doing, what am I doing? In terms of why it's important for me to do that particular. And if you're not feeling like that, don't do the activity. If you don't have a really pressing need, because then you're just going to be niyamagraha, just waving the incense. And I remember people really get into this. I can tell you a story. When we installed the deities in Fiji, the head pujari for the movement, Nisringa Kavacha, I could mention the name, he was telling me, you got to do so many circles around, so many circles around, so many circles. And I said, I was really good in mathematics, but this is beyond my ability. Because if I do it, I won't be thinking about why I'm doing it. I'll be thinking about 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 5 and a 6 and a 7. And each time you offer an article, there's a different count, right? And just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So we were installing the deities. So I had to do the first RT in front of like thousands of people. I'm thinking, oh my God. And he's there watching me. I don't know if you ever met Nishinga Kavacha before. Anyone here ever met Nishinga Kavacha? He's a good friend of mine, but he's really into you met him. He's really nice, but I said, if you want me to do the right thing and you're watching, you sit there while I'm doing RT, right at my feet. You don't have to worship my feet, but you just sit at my feet, and every time I picked up an article, what do I do now? And then I did a perfect RT. But when he's not around, I don't care. I don't care. I mean, I just be honest. I'm going to probably be doing the midnight RT at our temple. And I ain't going to count. I mean, I'll probably do 7 around. I'll do 7 for everybody. But I'll be thinking, hopefully, that please, Krishna, accept this. Because my brain is too small to think of both things at the same time. I think most people like that. That really, I want it to be a prayerful event when I do the midnight RT. It's my one RT of the year. I got kicked off the altar otherwise by the pujaris. Not now, but this was years ago, because I was dressing the deities too spontaneously. So, Pujari said, "You're out." Because I would bring in trees from outside and put them on the altar to make it look like the Vrindavan forest, and pin the deities close so it looked like the wind was blowing, and make the hair. Because really spontaneous Raganuga platform of devotional service. And the Pujari got so upset, cleaning up the altar when she dressed the deities at night was like a 2-hour endeavor to stick all the trees and the branches off the altar. So once a year I get a chance to go on the altar when the Pujari is sleeping. Now, once a year, so I do my RT and I don't count, but I'm thinking of Krishna. So that's the point. I'm not saying don't count. Don't quote me. Because all I need is to have Nishinga Kavacha angry with me. It's not a good thing. But, really, at this point in my life, it's too much. Too much. I just wanted to love Krishna and serve Krishna and chant his names and be happy. I joined the movement to be happy. Isn't it? Chant Hare Krishna and be happy. I didn't join this movement to be like a robot. I mean, if you want someone to count the circles, you program a robot. I'm sure with ChatGPT or GPT-4, you can do it quite easily. It's not a big thing. You have the perfect timing, curtains open, and the robot picks up the incense, lights the incense, and goes circles. Okay, you program it so many circles, and it goes to the next one like that. And just, wow, what a nice RT. So, but it's a disconnect. A robot is definitely disconnected, right? And there's no free will. Anyway, so Krishna wants voluntary service. Means when we have to do something, we do it voluntarily from our heart. There's a way to phrase it. Yeah, you have a question? Mike? Mike.
As you mentioned, we should do things because we choose to do them, and that's the best way that Krishna wants us to do it that way. But there's like one incident of Srila Prabhupada where a devotee comes and tells honesty to Prabhupada, I don't feel like offering obeisances. And Srila Prabhupada tells him, you offer obeisances and then you'll feel like it. Right. So the place of duty is also there, which is not the highest thing, but that's like Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganugas, where we're doing a really choice.
That's a fact, but at the same time you're offering obeisances, if you do it with the wrong mood, you're going to be resentful. You offer obeisances, but there has to be some intention. I want to feel like it. I don't feel like it. But at least there has to be some why there. If you're offering obeisances, I'm offering because I have to, because I've been ordered to do it. I hate it. Then it's really not going to have the effect of developing the desire to do it later on. So really unpacking what Prabhupada is saying, you offer obeisances because that way, at least there's an intention to want to offer obeisances. That's the reason in other words, I'm offering obeisances because I want to develop the desire to offer obeisances. Or you can go further back. I'm offering obeisances because I want to develop the desire to offer obeisances. Or because I want to please Prabhupada. I mean, you really have to connect it with something. Otherwise, one becomes resentful because they feel like they're being treated like a slave, like a robot. They feel the demand is there. It's not that just by the activity the consciousness changes. It's by the activity and the intention. So Prabhupada has explained to the person this way you'll develop the intention. So, it's a little further back than having the intention, the desire to have the intention. Does that make sense? So, so we do things. There has to be some motivation. We're chanting. Maybe the motivation is because I'm chanting because I don't want to go to hell. No. I'm chanting because I want to please my spiritual master. Why are you chanting? You should ask that. You should have some sankalpa. You know what a sankalpa is? It's like something usually done before a fire sacrifice. That we're here performing this marriage on this day of the month or whatever it is. But, why are you doing it? And if you want to chant good japa, because there's this principle of niyamagraha, which is a disconnect, doing things ritualistically. It takes you away from Krishna. Isn't it achahara prayasas japa niyamagraha? Doing things without the intention, the spiritual intention. So when you have to do something, think about the why. Even if it's just because Prabhupada wants it. At least that's something, because Prabhupada wants it. And I'm not saying do away with counting the circles or else they won't let me back in the temple again. So if you want to count all the circles, do it with the intention that this is what pleases Krishna. So there's an intention like that. In my mind, I can't fit both together. So that's why they don't let me go on the altar and do the Goloka. I just can't fit both together. If I start counting, then my mind goes to mathematics. Isn't it? I just can't. I mean, some people are, they're actually good at multitasking. I'm terrible at multitasking. Ladies are better at multitasking. They can talk on the phone, change the diapers of the devotees of the baby at the same time, cook prasadam at the same time, chastise their husbands at the same time, simultaneously. I can't do that. You know, because the ladies have more interconnections between the two hemispheres of the brain. Whereas men, they're really divided. You know, they're either emotional or logical. There's no in-between for men, isn't it? When men get emotional, there's no logic. When they're angry, there's no logic. And when they're logical, there's no emotions. Because, you know, there's more interconnections between the hemispheres. What? He's an exception. Well, that means he must have a little more estrogen than the rest of us. So, you know, I know when I get logical, it's just logic is there. You know, just mathematics and logical. Don't bother me. You get really focused. You know, if I go on my computer and I'm solving some problem on the computer, emotions go out the window. It's just like, it's like someone playing a video game. Well, there's emotions in video games, but anyway. So, all right, so any other questions before we read this? Actually, I wanted to read the purport about free will. Yeah, another question, yeah.
Maharaj, as a follow-up to Prabhu's question, I understand your response, and I'm actually seeing a little bit of that in my own heart, a little bit of rebellion. And in the name of empathic communication, I try to go the other direction, saying, I don't have the feelings of doing it, so better not do it.
Really? You get in trouble with it. So, there's certain things that just to live in this world, I'm not saying, I don't want to use the word have to, but there are certain obligations we have in life. And I mean, I realize one of the things, my obligation, generally I go to Mangal Arti every morning. Everybody who knows me, I'm there, I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I take that as an obligation, yes, but so I don't feel overburdened by it, I connect it with the need I have to connect with Krishna. And then it becomes joyful. So really, I'm not saying to throw out obligations, duties, and everything like that, but to throw out the have-to energy connected with those things. So it's, I'm not recommending you say, no, I'm not going to do it. If it's something optional, obviously, there's a whole trick how to say no when people request you to do something. Because sometimes you'll be in a temple and people will request you to do something that's not a daily obligation. It'll go on without you. Things like that. I mean, obviously, if there's a fire somewhere and there's some child trapped in a house, and they said, you know, please help get this child out of the house. You say, it doesn't meet my needs. My need for connection. Give me some time out to figure this out. You know, obviously, I mean, there are certain circumstances like that, or your child's sick and you have to take him to a hospital or something like that. This is obvious. But certain things, you know, are not obligatory for one reason or other. And you'll find when dealing with a community, like this community or any community, that there are going to sometimes be a lot of requests that if you respond to or you take as you do, will actually interfere with your meeting some of your basic needs. You know, and you have to be honest enough to know how to say no without negating the other person. You know, there's a whole chapter in this in the book, actually, in the book, How to Say No. And you have to be ready to reveal your own feelings. Something like when I hear you say, can I clean the temple at 9 o'clock tonight after the program? I'm feeling great anxiety because, I have a need to care for my family, or something like that. So sometimes we do have to say no. Don't have to say no, but we do say no because it's just like impractical. And if we don't say no, then we feel overburdened and resentful towards the other person. And then we say, would you be willing to look for another alternative, someone else to do this particular service? And it's just necessary to say no sometimes. I mean, I'll give you a funny example. That I'm here because Radhika nagged me for the last 2 years. And I kept saying, no. I have a very busy life. No. Finally, it's just like, I have a need for peace, so I'll give in this. So finally, oh my God, it's my mother nagging me again, Will you clean your room? Will you clean your room? But the interesting thing is my mother nagged me, you have to make your bed, you have to make your bed. So she was like an army drill sergeant. So if I didn't put something called hospital corners in my bed, you know what hospital corners are bed? She would rip off the covers and throw them on the ground and say, make it again. Like in the army, isn't it? Like the basic training. And so what I learned to do is I got so upset in my need for autonomy that I put false hospital corners on it that made look like hospital corners, just because I was angry with her. My need for autonomy. And then what I did with her bed is I did something called short sheeting her bed. I don't know if you know what that is. You know what that is? It's just a need for autonomy and rebellious. Because when you hear demands, there's two ways you could respond. One way is you can rebel. And the other way is you can be submissive. But the problem with being submissive, you may think, that's nice that you're submissive, is that you lose your sense of autonomy, or you're not able to satisfy your sense of autonomy, and ultimately you lose your ability to discriminate, what I call a moral compass or a judgment compass. And so I was very rebellious. So what I did, making beds, I couldn't stand that order. So I would take her bed. What short sheeting is that you have your bottom sheet. Okay, that's all right. And then you have the top sheet in the bed. So what you do is the top sheet is you fold it over on top of itself. So when someone gets into bed, they can only go in this far. Isn't it? Do you ever have that done to you in the army or? Yeah. So you just you pull the covers up. And I was so happy. So. And you see that, and of course you may say that, oh, my children are like that too, your children are like that. That's a sign of intelligence. It's actually a good sign. When there's some rebellion like that. I'm not suggesting, hopefully none of the children are listening. No, they're not. They didn't hear. That's good. So, our free will or ability to express ourselves is very, very important. Very, very important. We should encourage that with the children. We should relish that. Because another point is in child development, when children are 2 years old, they reach this stage called the what? The terrible twos. Anyone's heard of that before? Where previously the child was just like, kind of cute. Just identifying with the parent, reflecting the parent's emotions. It's just like having my own therapist, When you got angry, it got angry. When you got cried, it cried. Isn't it? That's pretty cool. I would like to have someone like that, an empathic doll. A robot is just like, ooh, ooh. That's the best therapist I can think of, isn't it? Well, that'd be wonderful. But then after 2, it's just no. And the parents would think, what happened with my kid? Must have had some bad association, Maybe because the kid's eating karmi grains or something. He's become demoniac. So my kid's like Robin, a demon now. But actually, the parents should rejoice in that, because the child is developing his own personality. His personality or her personality can't just be a reflection of your personality for their whole lives. So, get yourself a dog then. Isn't it? Dogs are good. They do reflect, because they never age beyond, like 1 or 2 years emotional age. So that's why people like dogs, because they're obsequious. He's always trying to please you. You get angry. Like if you have a nice dog, this is my humble suggestion. If you have a dog, if I get angry with you, the dog gets angry with you also. So why have children? Just get pets, they're cheaper. What? Yeah, a lot cheaper. You don't have to send them to the university. Because in America, they have hotels for pets and therapists, psychologists for pets. So anyway, we have to respect, the point is we have to respect the individuality and the autonomy of the children. Not let them have complete autonomy, but still, you respect that. And how to deal with them, and this is the later chapter, but we can talk about how to deal with them when they're doing something that's counterproductive for their spiritual or their material lives. They don't want to go to school. My autonomy is I'm not going to school. That nice Bir Krishna Maharaj just gave this wonderful seminar that I don't have to study. You're not respecting my autonomy. People can use this against you. And so then you take your time. It's a lot harder to deal with someone by explaining why it's in their best self-interest to go to school. Instead of telling kids, you got to go to school because I said so. I'm your mother. Get in that bus right now, or and I don't want to see you again till 3:00 in the afternoon. So instead, you sit down with them, because we don't have the time. We're very rushed now with the modern technology and then work. Everybody has to work a job. The husband has to work a job. The wife has to work a job. I don't have time for your nonsense. Just get to school. I got to get to work. I got to be on the computer at 9:00 this morning, so just shut up and get. That happens. And so if you want to be a proper parent, then you got to sit down with the kid. Okay, so let's take the different scenarios. You don't go to school, it's fine. You can be a rickshaw walla. When you grow up, do you want to be a rickshaw walla? That's what they say in India. I heard that one the other day. You can just drive a rickshaw. Not even a motorized one. You can just have the type where you put the two pieces of bamboo between your arms and go through the streets. They have that still. Calcutta, yeah. Not anywhere else in India. In India, they have these nice battery-powered ones. So you can clean. In America, you wouldn't say rickshawala. You could say you can be a maid. You can clean houses. Is that what you want to do? Yeah, that's up to you. It's your free will. Cleaning houses for the rest of your life. Cleaning someone's toilets. And that way they'll see the implications of each course of action. And you want to, or with a boy it would be more like, you want to have cars like a Maserati when you get older? Of course, Jiva's not hearing that. Do you like Maseratis, Jiva? Like Lamborghinis? You know how you can afford it? You know how you can get a Lamborghini? By studying hard, you can have a nice Lamborghini. Otherwise, you'll just be stuck with a 20-year-old Volkswagen. You'll just have to drive your parents' van around. So, I better study then. So, for them, that's important. You got to figure out what's important for them. Otherwise, you're going to be living at home for the rest of your life and listening to me. That's all. Anything but that. I'm going to school right away. So the point is, there's ways but it takes some time. It takes some sitting down with them sometimes for hours. Why shouldn't you associate with so-and-so? I mean, there's so many things. You want to protect your children from bad association, right? You can't just say, this is bad association. That doesn't compute. That doesn't compute in someone's mind. The child doesn't think bad association. What does that mean? So you sit down for it's a nice 3 hours. You got to sit down with your child. It's hard because we're used to snapping our fingers. I'm your mother, I'm your father, it's your duty. And life, and then you're going to end up with a kid who's rebellious later on. You'll join the Hare Krishna movement or something like that. I joined. I tell the story all the time that I joined, and my family was very much guilt and controlled by guilt. It's just like an Indian family, like as I say, Gujarati family. So I joined the movement, and it was the worst possible thing for my mother, because what is she going to tell her friends? Really. In certain places in India, we don't make any brahmacharis. Why? Because the parents are so so much guilt. I'll mention where it is. In Gujarat, we don't make any brahmacharis. All the brahmacharis in the temple are from Bengal. And go to Ahmedabad or Baroda or anything like that. And so I was in a family. No. But, I have a lot of Gujarati friends, But anyway, so I joined the movement. My mother's just like complete Gujarati. And so I get the message, your mother is dying. You've actually the cause of your mother dying. Who knows how long she's going to live now? Because you joined the Krishna conscious movement. And me being rebellious, not like a typical kid, I thought, well, she remembers me when she leaves her body. She goes back to home, back to Godhead. So there was, I'm not saying that children should feel like that, but But because I was in a state of rebellion, because of all the impositions of you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that, it was like, well, this is the best thing that can happen to her. So anyway, like 50 years later, she was still around. You know, all these threats were useless because it didn't work on me. And then she became very favorable to Krishna consciousness. She would go to Rath Yatra in New York when I was there. And when she was leaving her body, there was only devotees around chanting the holy names. There wasn't anyone else. You know, I couldn't be there. I was somewhere else in the world. But there was this, you know, one of the ladies who does some assistance where it helps me. She was there next to my mother, lying down next to my mother, giving her Tulsi water and Tulsi leaf and everything, chanting the holy name. My mother left her body in such a way. So it shows it pays to be rebellious. So anyway, that's an example of how there's guilt and how we rebel. So if you want the children to cooperate, now the word cooperation is a very interesting word. It's a two-way street. You know, sometimes we use the word in a different way. We say, you have to cooperate with me. You ever hear that? I'm the temple president. I'm your mother. You have to cooperate. Why don't you just be honest? You have to obey. Just use the right word. Your vocabulary, you know, you should have a vocabulary test. So cooperate means cooperate. Back and forth. Dadati pratigranata guyamakyati prichati. That's right, let them play. It's kind of fun. It's nice seeing the children having fun. It actually makes my life better. So anyway, so let me read finally we're going to get to the quote. Every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. And this freedom is obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. Illusioned by the external energy, everyone thinks that he is free, but actually he is bound up by the laws of nature. That's another reason I joined Krishna consciousness, be free of the impulses of nature. A conditioned soul cannot freely move from one place to another, even on this earth, what to speak of one planet to another. But a full-fledged, free soul like Narada, always engaged in chanting the Lord's glory, is free to move not only on earth, but also in any part of the universe, as well as in any part of the spiritual sky. We can just imagine the extent and unlimitedness of his freedom, which is as good as that of the Supreme Lord. That's the benefit of bhakti. You get to serve Krishna freely, spontaneously, lovingly. It's all done out of love. So his freedom, he's actually controlled by love. That's freedom. If we are controlled by anything else, that's not freedom. So everything, this is bhakti. We're the Bhakti Yoga Society. That means we do what we're doing out of love. The parents take care of their children out of love. The wife and the husband, they do service for each other out of love. You know, dadati pratigranati guyamakyati prichati. If you're doing for any other reason, I mean, other than fulfilling your basic needs here, then it's a disconnect. It's a disconnect, you know. Ultimately, if your basic needs are fulfilled, then everything is done out of love. I'm here because I love Prabhupada. I'm serving Prabhupada. Otherwise, where would I be? I'd be at Govardhan saying goodbye, cruel worlds. Just chanting the names of Krishna. But you know, like people say, when are you going to retire from the GBC? I said the retirement is called samadhi. You know, previously I was actually planning When I was 65, I said, I'm going to retire when I'm 65. But then now, almost 10 years later, I'm still here. So, I mean, as long as I can function in that capacity, then whatever. I mean, service to Prabhupada, because every time I think of retirement, I hear Prabhupada's voice chastising me. You rascal. And then I think of Prabhupada's example where he didn't retire. You know, sometimes you see the devotees, this is not criticism, they want to retire at the ripe old age of 50 to Vrindavan so they live out the rest of their days in Vrindavan. Now, if they're able to do service, fantastic. But if just to go there, wait until you die, which may take another 20 or 30 or 40 years, I want to die in Vrindavan. I mean, Prabhupada got criticized by some people. He left Vrindavan, and they should stay here and die in Vrindavan and go back to Godhead. But if you have the right mood in relationship to Guru and Krishna, everywhere you go will be Vrindavan. Like Prabhupada said that. And then Krishna made the arrangements so he could be there in Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Mandir, when he left this world. So let me finish this. Unlimitedness of freedom, which is good as the Supreme Lord. There's no reason or obligation for his traveling. In other words, no have-tos. And no one can stop him for his free movement. Similarly, the transcendental system of devotional service is also free. It may or may not develop in a particular person, even after he undergoes all the detailed formulas. There's that point. He can do cross his T's, dot his I's, do the circles. I didn't do his circles. That was a Zorro, you know. That wasn't a circle. But anyway, he can do all these things perfectly, wake up early every morning. And sometimes we see that, you know, devotees for many years, they're just like perfect sadhana, perfect everything. And then one day, what happened to Krishna Das? Well, he found a girlfriend. You know, whatever. And you see that because they're just doing the formulas without the intention. Similarly, the association of the devotee is also free. One may be fortunate to have it, or one may not have it even after thousands of endeavors. Therefore, in all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. This is a really interesting statement, isn't it? Prabhupada's Bhagavatam purport, Shastra. In all spheres of devotional service, freedom is the main pivot. I mean, everything revolves around it. Everything's, you know, pivot is not exactly revolving, but, you know, it's like a leverage. Without freedom, there's no execution of devotional service. This is heavy statements. I mean, really important statements. The freedom surrendered to the Lord does not mean that the devotee becomes dependent in every respect. Wow. I mean, Arjuna, getting to the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna had the freedom to say no. Krishna didn't say, Krishna was not like a Jewish mother or a Hindu mother. He said, if you really love me, you're killing me, Arjuna, you know. You should fight. And if you don't fight, you're a demon, Rakshas, and everything like that. Because Krishna showed him that whether you fight or not, he showed him the universal form, right? Whether you fight or not, everybody's already dead who's supposed to die. They're going to die. You can be an instrument or not be an instrument. And that's how we should approach people. You know, if you need something that, let's say if you're managing people, we're giving you an opportunity to serve. And if you don't serve, we'll find someone else. But you have this opportunity. You know, we should think about that in Krishna consciousness. I have this opportunity to render service rather than just like an obligation. And then it becomes joyful at that point. And so anyway, Arjuna said, now what do you want to do? At the end, Krishna says to him, what do you want to do? And Krishna said, I'm going to fight. I mean, Arjuna says, sorry, Arjuna says, I'm going to fight. And Krishna's happy. But there's no like, I'm going to die if you don't fight. Or the battle will be lost if you don't fight. It wasn't that. Krishna doesn't say that we're going to lose everything if you don't fight. He doesn't say that in the Gita. He says it's going to happen anyway. So you can get the benefit. So that's free will. And Arjuna could have easily said no. Easily. But he didn't, because he loved Krishna. And ultimately, he was, he really loved Krishna. Krishna was his friend, of course. Okay, any questions before we go to the blocks of communication? We're going slowly, but it's good. I mean, we're touching a lot of bases here, which are actually important. Any questions or comments, or should we just go to the blocks? Yes, sir.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In response to your initial part of the presentation, that is relationship. We were talking about email. If somebody says something or writes something or puts it in the media and accuses you of something which is totally, totally false, and the person who's presenting it also know it is false, and I'll give you a very specific example. In that situation, do you fight against that person or do you just ignore that person? I will give you a specific example later. You want me to give you the example?
If you want, or
But just go ahead. Just go ahead.
generally, one should be strategic. Because sometimes fighting against the person makes it worse. Particularly when you're dealing with social media. What I've experienced, and because on a regular basis people say things about me in social media, it's just like, life in the big world. I've experienced it, when it first happened, I just gave a lengthy explanation why they were wrong. And then, not only did they write back, but then you had all these comments, there's this puffed up ISKCON sannyasi, he's just he's abusing people, all these things, comments. So it actually exploded. This social media, I'm talking about social media. Not talking about the legal sphere or not talking about the business sphere. But social media, my experience is when you defend yourself, it gets worse. And then it becomes more prominent. Everybody knows about it. It's like Prabhupada said, one time there was a man who came home and there was someone in his home who was stealing. And the person said, I'm not stealing. So, in that scenario, I don't defend myself. I just and then it goes away really quickly. Because the interesting thing about social media, they always have their thing of the day. Something, after 2 or 3 days, there's another heavy issue for them to deal with. And they've forgotten about you. That's social media. Now, on an individual basis, if someone accuses me and it's affecting my life, depending on whether I can be effective at defending myself, I will defend myself. I will explain, present evidence that, it's not true. I won't go on counterattack, because counterattacks make you look really bad. Or if it's a legal situation, obviously you go to court and you defend yourself, you get a lawyer and you defend yourself in court. I would say it depends on practically how well a defense would work. Does that make sense?
Yes. I'll give you the specific example. I very recently watched a movie which is going to be released, I think, the third week of September. The title of the movie is The Vaccine War.
The vaccine war?
Vaccine, like COVID vaccine.
Oh, yeah, vaccine war, yeah.
Yeah. So India, as a country, never produced any vaccine before.
Right.
And now they worked on this COVID vaccine. The entire Western world was thinking that India is going to perish during this COVID-19 because Number one, they have 1.4 billion people. Number two, they have no vaccine. Number two, they will not get that many vaccine from the western part of the world. This is as per the movie I'm telling you, plus I know a little bit. So in that movie, the Western media and India, government of India and the virologists, the virology is the science of study of virus. So they somehow were working on this vaccine and they were getting some success, but they did not publish this. But the West, then when they published this, that we are working on it, the entire Western world accused India that India has never produced a vaccine. They will never be able to produce a vaccine. When they said that we have a vaccine, then they said, oh, you created a vaccine that is substandard, it is not effective, it is not safe. But then it was published in the media, according to the movie. And then within that department of virology, some of the employees said, we should fight this media who is making these reports that India cannot do it and it's substandard and all that kind of stuff, which is garbage, which is nonsense. And their boss said, no, ignore them, ignore them. So this is the question, should we ignore them or should we protest? So they kept on ignoring. And the Western world was winning the war because in India, people got this impression through the media that the vaccine produced in India by Indians is not good. It's substandard. Then finally, they decided to go against the media. One of the persons said, that media should be sued for 100 crore rupees or whatever. That is the only way to teach them a lesson. So is that the right thing to do, to sue them 100,000 crore or whatever, or just to forgive them or forget about them, or to come out in the media and prove them wrong?
That depends on your intention. What do you want to do? I mean, if you can be productive and you're dealing with a whole population. First of all, you're dealing with a whole population in India that's being denigrated by that false propaganda. And so it'll affect people's morale in India. You know, it's very much reflective of what the British did in their denigration of Indian culture. The British, if anyone's here British, forgive me. The British are not very good at philosophy. So they hired German philosophers, Max Muller, you're not probably familiar with some of the names, to actually criticize Sanskrit or English, or not English, but criticize Indian culture. And, you know, this is like what Rudyard Kipling called, what the white man's burden. I'm sure you've heard about that before. So that England could subjugate India. And because that massive campaign destroyed or hurt the Indian morale to a large extent, and because somehow or other the people in India didn't respond to that and didn't defend it, it really hurt people's faith in Vedic culture. So in that particular case, there should have been an immediate response to the British strategy of denigrating Indian culture, especially, you know, the spirituality in India. But somehow or other, so in other words, sometimes it's very appropriate to fight. And I think in the case that you mentioned about the vaccine, it's appropriate to fight because it affects the morale of the whole country. You know, so you have to see the ramifications of acting in one way versus ramifications of acting in another way. So if I was in the situation, I would fight. I would take them to court. Because it's important for the country or people in the country to be proud of their culture. And especially the culture in India is based on spirituality, and it's a higher culture than the Western culture. Of course, nowadays, everyone in India is accepting the Western culture. You know, there's this concept of Western culture and imitate the West, you know, imitate the the monkeys in the West. You know, so, but that's a result. You know, people in India deprecating their own culture is a result of centuries of propaganda done, well, by the Muslims, by the British, and by other people. I mean, the invaders. India was a captive country, as you know, for many hundreds, over 1,000 years. And so there needs to be fighting too. Fighting is not bad. Like Prabhupada said, we are not pacifists. You know, the whole Mahabharata war was fighting, killing. So one has to protect. I mean, if one is concerned about the people in their country, you have to fight. Or if someone who you love is being offended, then you protect them. Like if your guru is being offended, it's not you just sit back and say, oh, I'm sure it was their need for this or that. You fight. But usually my point is when if I am criticized personally, it's a different thing. But if Krishna's movement or Indian culture or the Vedic literatures are criticized, then we become like fire. Or the Guru, you know, Prabhupada is criticized. I mean, I just naturally become fiery. I mean, just like this whole point, we're talking about this, where the jiva comes from. Not your son, Jiva. I know where he comes from. But where the soul comes from, you know, if someone in ISKCON takes a different position than Prabhupada and minimizes Prabhupada, I get very upset. But if someone minimizes me, you know, who cares? It's probably helping me in my spiritual life. You know, so it says my eyebrows, I don't shave off my eyebrows. Who cares? Maybe it's true. I don't care. I don't care. You know, maybe I should get some dye so the gray in my eyebrows. You know, I don't care. You know, we have to develop a little healthy detachment as far as ourselves, but if someone who we love or country that we love is denigrated, yeah, sure. We shouldn't tolerate. Shouldn't tolerate because India came up with many mathematical theorems, such as the Pythagorean theory, way before Pythagoras came up with it. You know, Airavata, you know, and it just due to the propaganda of all these invaders who wanted to exploit India economically, especially the British. Prabhupada actually slammed the British. He said the British are a country of merchants, businessmen. Of course, he also slammed the Germans. He said German language sounds like barking dogs. But, you know, Prabhupada was very defensive of India in that particular way, the Indian culture, the Indian heritage. So it's a question of what's important to us and whether the strategy works. If the strategy is counterproductive, don't do it. If you're going to court is going to reflect worse on you, don't do it. Worse on India. So you think strategically. Yeah, but if you're dealing with facts, like you have all these facts that, you know, India has very advanced science. In fact, India has more technical institutes than any other country in the world. Like when I go to Vrindavan, for example, every 5 kilometers, there's another institute. You ever seen that on the road now? I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, that's why, you know, many of these firms, technological firms in America are headed up by people from India. Yeah. But if you look at the percentage of people that died in the West, in America, versus the percentage of people who died in India, it's much less in India. Much, much less than India. And it's amazing because in India, people are much closer together, they're mixing much more. But in the West, you had massive amounts of people dying. Yeah, it worked. It worked very nicely. Yeah, so anyway, that was the point. So, okay. Any other questions? From the Deshis? From the Deshis. So, yeah, actually, it's a very good point. So, yes, we defend. I'm not saying we don't defend ourselves. I mean, Prabhupada, I mean, he was part of Mahatma Gandhi's movement for years. But he didn't agree with Mahatma Gandhi's stance, where Mahatma Gandhi said if he had a daughter, if his daughter was attacked, that he wouldn't do anything. Prabhupada said we should fight. If someone is attacked, we defend. We're not absolute pacifists. Bhagavad Gita is not a book of pacifism, as many people present Bhagavad Gita. It's not. It's a book of Dharma, not pacifism. Okay. So, any other questions before we go into the blocks of communication? It's interesting. Okay? So we're going to go over what's called the 4 Ds of discommunication. We need a scribe. A scribe is still alive. Ready? The first D, I think you're all going to be familiar with. It's called diagnosis. I think we've talked about that quite a bit. You know, you give something a name, you give something a label, or someone a label, and that's how you see them. Like we talked about Baldy over there. You're going to have no trouble remembering that name from now on because of the label. It's got a, really interesting derogatory label. I don't mean it derogatory. It's just, and then what's his name? Do you remember? Yeah, Harry. So you remember his name more than you remember his actual name. And someone will say to me later on, what was the name of that Harry guy, And that's what Donald Trump does, It's really interesting. Like when you think of Clinton, you think cheater, right? Immediately that comes to your mind. Cheating Hillary. It's pretty good, isn't it? And when you hear Biden, what do you think of? Nah, I think of old, useless. Isn't it? That's immediately because that's what? Incompetent, useless, old. Yeah, old. But that's the label Trump is trying to put on him. I mean, yeah. So you actually put the label on it, but it sticks. It sticks. It's really interesting. So everybody who we meet, that's called a diagnosis. Okay? And then we'll go over each one. A diagnosis we pretty much covered, so we don't really go over that one that much. The next one is denial. Which is basically a denial of responsibility. Or, like the Christians say, the devil made me do it. You ever hear that before? Or we say, it's Maya. I'm in Maya, right? Someone says, many times I go to disciples and how could you do that? So they say, it's just Maya, I'm in Maya. I hear that all the time. It's Krishna's illusory energy. Krishna says in the Gita, everyone's forced to act helplessly according to the impulses born of the modes of nature, from action even for a moment. It's Krishna saying this. Or, why did you yell at me? Krishna made me yell at you. Deny responsibility. Why didn't... Yeah.
In addition to denial of responsibility, it seems like there's also what's disconnecting in the relationship is denial of my own feelings and needs.
Yeah, that's an internal thing. So some examples of denial of responsibility is, it's your fault I'm miserable. That happens in a close relationship, family relationship. You made me angry. You said to your child, and you get really angry, you made me angry at you. Child didn't make you angry, it's your needs that made you angry or not. It's a real big one. And it disturbs communication. So, I drink because I'm an alcoholic. That's a big one. Why do you drink liquor? I'm an alcoholic. Why do you take drugs? I'm a druggie. People use that all the time. The children say, why don't you listen? The parents say, why don't you listen to me? Because I'm a child. Did you ever hear that one? Yeah. And also, even when you're told to do something, it's just like, why did you lie? Because the temple president told me to lie. Who used that in World War II, that excuse? Yeah, the Nazi soldiers. Following orders. And even though they were following orders, when it came back down to what's called the Nuremberg trials, anyone's heard of that? They still had to face trial. Why did you torture people in the concentration camp? I was just following orders. Wow, denial of responsibility. I got angry because I'm a conditioned soul. That's a big one. I'm a conditioned soul. Krishna always gives us a choice. We mentioned in the Gita. And we have to take responsibility. Okay. I guess we should go over a little exercise just to illustrate that. We already did exercises with diagnosis. Okay. Well, that's the wrong exercise. Anyway, we'll figure out an exercise later on. And then the next D of discommunication is demands, which we also talked about. Actually, we covered most of those already. We talked about demands. Demands means language that implies that if others don't comply, they will be punished or blamed or given a guilt trip. That's a demand. Like, I said, my mother joining the movement, unless you leave the movement, then you're going to kill your mother. And also a demand can be based upon reward too. If you do this, then you'll get this benefit. From my father's side, he approached it from a different angle of vision. If you leave the movement, I'll give you $100,000. And at that time, $100,000 is equal to what we have $1 million today. That's pretty good, isn't it? How many of you would stay in the movement if I offered you $1 million to leave? Would stay in the movement. If I said, here's $1 million, you never have to work again for the rest of your life, because $1 million's not that much. But you just have to Stop coming to the temple. Not even leave the movement, just stop coming to the temple. That's true. But you just have to be at home. You can't participate in ISKCON anymore. You can't serve Prabhupada anymore, your Guru Maharaj anymore. Yeah. But you would be willing not to come to the temple for $1 million? Where'd you go? But there's Prabhupada's temple. No, any temple, any temple. No Hare Krishna temples. Oh, still you're thinking maybe you do it. You wouldn't go to any of Prabhupada's temples. No, that's Prabhupada. It would have to be, couldn't be connected with ISKCON. Terrible. That's terrible. Okay, so we're talking about demands. So demand is like someone does something or doesn't someone do something that's either reward or punishment. They're not doing it for the actual reason of doing it. You know, if you come to America and serve the temple for 3 years, you'll get a green card. How's that sound? Not you. But that's like demand, you know. And implicit, you know, it's the same thing. Or if you don't stay in the temple, like if you leave before your time is up, then you're out. Yeah. But that's a disconnect. In other words, these are D's of discommunication or disconnection. Because then you're doing something for an ulterior purpose. Like if I came here for some ulterior purpose, let's say, you know, oh, Maharaj, come, not simply because I'm being nagged, but Maharaj, come and we'll give you $500 an hour. That's my price. No, it's not enough. So, you know, ISKCON sannyasis. So anyway, we'll buy you a new Tesla if you come. Then I'm disconnected from the activity. I'm not thinking of like helping people and presenting this important thing. I won't be doing this from my heart. Right now I'm doing this from my heart because what am I getting from this? You know, after the meeting, all I get is some boiled soft vegetables. Some mush. I mean, that's all I get at night. And raw kale thrown on a plate. Or I have to just cover it with olive oil so it'll taste half decently. I mean, what do I get? So I really have to like what I'm doing. And I do. I'm having a good time. I like what I'm doing. So anyway, so that's what a demand is. And when we hear a demand, we naturally want to rebel. So let me go over some of these things. Do you all enjoy hearing a demand? No. If you don't do this, you enjoy, you're going to get punished. Or, of course, we may enjoy getting a reward. But it's the reward. The example I often give is that my parents, here's my mother again, in order to get me to study well, that every time I got an A, I would get a certain amount of money. If I got a B, a little less. A C, negative. So then it taught me mathematics, which is important in my field of study. I learned how to add and subtract very early in life. At the age of 3, I was come home from kindergarten, you know. What's your report? No, I'm joking. So it's a disconnect. People should do things from their heart. So as I mentioned before, these are the things I talked about before. We hear a demand, we can either rebel or submit, but not with the heart. And I also gave the example of the Gita. Actually, I spoke about all these things informally. Okay. So let's do an exercise individually. Think of a time when you did something from the heart, rather than because you had to do it. And then share with me. Does anyone want to start? Radhika, you want to start? Think of a time, just one time, one specific example when you did something from your heart, not because there was any external reward or external punishment. The reward is intrinsic. You understand the word intrinsic instead of extrinsic. Extrinsic would be getting money for doing well in school, because that gets you to like the extrinsic reward. You know, I really like the money. You know, get $5 is a lot of money in those days. It means I could do anything I wanted. So the need for autonomy. Money is not a need. I just want to make that clear. Money is the means to an end to fulfill a need. Because the money itself, let's say if there's inflation, is useless. But what it does is important. So anyway, so it made me like, you know, that $5. And my brother, he became so enamored with money, he loved it so much. I didn't develop that. He was approached in the same way with rewards. He kept his money under his mattress, just so he would feel good. You find that in India sometimes, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why when the thieves come in your house, they know where to look for the money.
The mattress.
I've seen this oftentimes, you know, there's a thief going and knows exactly where the jewelry is. Behind the drawer. Isn't that where people put the jewelry? So then they take out the drawer and put something behind the drawer. So the thieves know exactly the culture. And the money is under something or behind the drawer also and under the bed. So my brother was like that. And he loved money. He would kiss it sometimes. Yeah. There's nothing to talk about. We should have just introduced him to worshiping Lakshmi instead of Krishna. He would have loved that. So, all right, so who wants to share with us something you did from your heart, and what was your feeling, your emotion?
Well, I was thinking, Maharaj, of cooking for you, since you have absolutely no expectation and no demand, and you're totally independent, and you'd maybe even rather cook for yourself, but just the opportunity to cook your mush soup that you described. The reward is the connection. It really meets my need for connection with you.
What was your feeling?
Joy.
Joy.
Yeah.
That's good. Joy in doing that. Someone else wanted to share something? Yes, sir.
In our business, we had an employee who worked there for 20 years, and he was very productive, very honest, sincere. and after 20 years, I gave him a brand new car as an incentive without expecting anything at all from that gentleman. And why? What is my reward? Only inside happiness that I did what I should have done, and I felt good myself, and I did not expect anything from him.
Wow, wonderful. You know, that was connection and happiness and joy to contribute to someone else, because we have a need to contribute to someone else. Yeah, appreciation and everything like that. Do you have any openings in your firm?
I didn't hear that question. What was
Do you have any openings in your business?
Good news is I'm retired. I have no more business.
Too bad. I thought you might have some openings for some.
But I can tell you this, that gentleman used to drive cars for a jewel store, and in those 15, 20 years, he became the manager of our business, and he tells me, or he used to tell me on every Thanksgiving, that, Om, you did more for me than my own father did for me. Wow. Because I told him, because he was smart, intelligent, but he was only high school graduate, and I told him, you go to college, the business will pay for the tuition, and business will adjust your schedule as per the need in the college. So that's why I feel really good. And in his family, I think he was probably the highest educated person. And today, I can tell you very proudly and gladly that his children, one of them is a lawyer, one of them is a nurse, one of them is a physical therapist. And I have nothing to do with that, but the only thing I think I did is created the importance of education in his mind. That's all.
And you feel happy.
I feel very happy.
That's good. That's a perfect example. That you're really concerned with someone. And that's actually should be the position of a guru or a spiritual preceptor. I can tell a similar story. One time, I mean, I deal with people in the university all the time. So there was one lady in the university who was struggling. And I just facilitate. I didn't pay for her education. I facilitated. I said, her becoming a doctor, and now she's a doctor. She's a psychiatrist, successful psychiatrist. And there was a young man who now has a PhD from the UK, Cambridge. Has a PhD from Cambridge, and he was just like practically dropping out of college, doing very well, but badly in school. He was taking drugs before, it's marijuana. And now he has a PhD in philosophy and religion from Cambridge. And I told that to his parents. His parents, he's from an Indian family. And he said, his parents were saying, why did he join the movement? He could have become a devotee when he was like 60 years old and retired. And I said, they were criticizing the movement. And I said, look, do you know how we actually had to put him through college? The movement put him through college, not by paying for his tuition or anything, but by getting him straight. And it feels really good.
Yes. And the best thing you can give it to any other human being is what you're giving, that is education. Or create the environment where the person can get better and better education. Yes. There's nothing more precious than that, yes, that you can give it to another human being.
Exactly. And when you give that to someone without any expectation in return, it's fun. You're just like, wow, life is worth living. It's fun, It's more better than money, better than any sort of material thing. You just feel you contributed to someone else. It's a need. Our need to be compassionate and contribute to others is just innate in our being. It's actually hardwired into the soul. So anyone else want to share?
Maharaj, I was thinking of Just 2 days back it happened. I wanted to serve you in some way because I have a lot of appreciation how you have been impacting our family, everybody. But because of my work, I couldn't do much what I wanted to. But there is a little desire in the heart to make a garland. But I couldn't get the opportunity during the weekend. But then Sri Radhika Mataji asked, do you have the capacity to do this? I know it's a weekday, it's hard for you. It's not a demand. It's not even a request. She was just... It's not even a kind of a request. She was just opening up the opportunity. So I was really touched by that, and I was also seeing that as Krishna's reciprocation to my desire. I was just telling the situation because it happened in other times, somebody asking me, even as a nice, polite request, I would say, okay, out of obligation or like whatever. And I would be like, oh, I have to do this late in night and tomorrow I have work, this, that. Why did I say yes? Why do they have to ask me? All that stuff. But on that day, in spite of being late or whatever, I was so joyful. I went to the store, I got the flowers, and I was like, oh, this combination, that combination. It was such a joy thinking of you that I got this opportunity to express my appreciation and gratitude. Because generally, when I hear this question out of the heart, I was like, I don't think I have ever done anything out of my heart. In one sense, I was feeling I'm doing everything so much out of obligation and demands. But this question really brought that out so happily. And I was also going to ask you this question as you're describing we have to shift the energy. Choose to. And I'm like, that's not possible. Everything I have to do in my life. But this question really made me to reflect and made me think it is possible that we could actually choose to do something.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, just like in the beginning, let's say Sri Radhika was saying, you have to come here, you have to come here. She actually I think you used the words have to, yeah. Come, please come. But the intent, maybe you didn't use the word have to, but it was just like, I won't stop bugging you until you come. So I had to rephrase that in my mind for myself. I'm here because I got bugged. So it was rephrased to, I'm choosing to do this, and I had to figure a reason. Why am I choosing to do it? It took me about 2 months to figure out, so choosing to do it because I want to connect to the devotees and, myself, deepen my understanding of empathic communication, because it helps me deepen it too. And remember, I have to practice, not have to, but, practicing actually helps me a lot. And so, and I really love connecting to the devotees in this particular way. And it's fun. Otherwise I have no one to hear my jokes. I can't just sit in front of a mirror and tell jokes about stuff. So you get an audience, So it helps. So good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I appreciate it. I've met my need for connection. And that's also how we deal this. We're illustrating different things, like appreciating someone and then receiving appreciation, because many times if we receive appreciation, we tend to negate that appreciation. For example, let's say if someone were to address the deities, like if I would address the deities and someone would say, wow, that was done very nicely, then many times, I wouldn't do this, but many times people would say, oh, it was nothing. Krishna just did it, just used me as an instrument. And so you're really like slapping the other person in the face. Instead, you say, thank you, I really appreciate that. It helps me connect with Krishna. It helps me getting this feedback, really helps. me deepen my devotion. So I'm connecting with the need. But oftentimes we have this habit of just saying, it was nothing. It's like saying, you're nothing. So it is 4:00. All right, thank you very much. We'll continue tomorrow. It's 4:00. It's time for my boiled mushy vegetables. So, the fourth one. Okay. So demand, denial, deserve. Yes, deserve. Deserve, yeah. That is, you deserve to be rewarded, you deserve to be punished, or I deserve to suffer. Yeah, we can go over this tomorrow with a little. That means actions deserve reward or punishment. You deserve to suffer. Getting back to my mother, if something happened to me, like I cut myself, God is punishing you because you didn't listen to me. Did you ever hear that one? God is punishing you, deserve to suffer. So we don't, I deserve a better treatment. Jai! Shishi Radha Shamsundar Ki Jai. Okay. Whoops. So I think that does it for the day. And we'll see everybody tomorrow. What did we say? You said 10. And I said 10:30. No, I said 11, and then we negotiated at 10:30. No, 10:30. 10:30 is fine. India Standard Time, which means 11 anyway. So 10:30 tomorrow. Thank you very much. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And then tomorrow for the Sunday program, we're going to be